My next guest is a Los Angeles-based trial lawyer, persuasive communications speaker, and administrative law judge for the County of Los Angeles. She has operated her own litigation firm for 3 decades, handling complex business and real estate matters through trial, beginning her career in the entertainment industry. She holds certifications from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania in executive leadership, influence and persuasion, and understanding the brain, using neuroscience to deliver better business results. At conferences, events, and podcasts, she educates high-performing leaders on the persuasive communication skills they never taught in school. Skills grounded in cutting-edge brain research that amplify the irreplaceable human qualities AI cannot replicate, at least not yet. She offers courses, workshops, and private trainings through her company, The Edge Education. Today, we're going to dive into how you can tell better stories with Jennifer Gardner. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, what led you to focus on, of all things, storytelling, especially coming from a legal background where facts and logic seem to dominate?
I love the way you just asked that question. It's really perfect segue into the answer, actually, because when I started, I had no training in how to try a case because I left the law firm environment in order to start my own firm pretty much right away. And I realized really quickly when I started getting all these cases with clients who wanted their trials, their day in court, come hell or high water, no matter what. I mean, like settlement offers would be made to them that were literally everything they had been asking for on Tuesday. And on Friday, they decide to reject it. And they say, nope, we're starting trial on Monday just over a matter of principle, which put incredible pressure on me, of course. And then I got into these courtrooms and I realized, oh my goodness, what do I do? What do I do? And the only thing that I knew how to do was to tell a story. That was the only thing I knew how to do because I've been telling stories. My mother will say, since I could talk. Actually, before I could talk, I was reciting verbatim Walt Disney stories like Peter Pan and Bambi. Those were my favorites. So I'd listen to the records, I studied the stories, and then I would speak that before I could form complete sentences. So you could say I was programmed with storytelling. And storytelling is what helped me win my cases.
All right. So when we think about marketing, many of us also lean heavily on facts and features and proof. Why does storytelling often, or why do you feel that storytelling often outperforms these approaches?
Well, it's not just what I think, it's what the science shows, which I've spent a lot of time really diving into so that I could make sure that I'm not just winging it when I go to court, so that I'm nailing it. And the science shows that our human brains decide primarily based on feelings, how we're feeling and what our emotion is. And stories trigger feelings and emotions. And it's when those parts of the brain are firing, when you're listening to a story, it moves you to make the decision that's usually compatible with what the storyteller is wanting you to decide, if you're good at it, if you know how to do it.
So you kind of tease this up. You've studied the neuroscience behind storytelling. So what's happening in our brains when we hear a story that makes it so powerful and resonate with us?
Well, there are neural networks that run throughout the brain that fire when we're feeling emotions and that have been linked to the decision-making process and the decision that's ultimately made. And it used to be, we used to say right brain, left brain, right? The left brain was the more linear brain and the right brain was the emotional brain. But it turns out that these are complex neural networks that run throughout the brain. And when they are firing, the brain is more inclined to make a decision. So there's one really important point that I'm leaving out here, which is that there's been really important research, which I find incredibly exciting, that shows that when the storyteller is feeling certain emotions in themselves, as they're telling a story, the same parts of their brains that are lighting up in the brains of the listeners. So it requires this whole new level of intentionality when we're presenting, when we're speaking, when we're trying cases, when we're creating video for marketing materials, whatever it is, in order to ensure that we are really connected with ourselves and really intentional with the emotion that we want to evoke in other people. And this is something that actors do naturally. They do it all the time, right? They're trained to do that. And that's why you can go into a theater and you can feel what the actors are feeling. You can feel the drama, you can feel the pain, the joy. It's the same thing that we need to do as marketers and as lawyers and as presenters and as business communicators.
So if we're creating a video to show off why our solution is the best, what I'm hearing from you is we can't just dial it in. We actually have to believe this, and we have to kind of get our emotional state a little bit higher to be able to transfer, because other people are mirroring what they're seeing in our own behavior.
Yes, you got it. That's what we need to do.
And it's interesting because obviously in marketing, on some level, whether you have a scarcity mindset or you have a plentiful mindset, there is a certain amount of competition that goes on in any industry. You're seeing it in a very refined space. You have to tell a better story than the person across the aisle from you when you go into the courtrooms. What are some of the things that you think about when you're trying to tell a story that resonates with 12 jurors? Mm-hmm. That's going to resonate more than the person who's taking the other side of the argument?
Well, I love that question. What do I think about? Well, I think a lot about a personal experience that I can relate to, how I felt, that's similar to the situation that my client or my witness is in right now. And I think about it in universal terms. So I'm looking at what is something that's similar that many other people have experienced, and how can I spin that in the terms of the case? So how can I frame the story of the case so that people will start to relate to it themselves, like on an emotional level in their own lives, so that they get sort of emotionally anchored into the emotional landscape of the matter that I'm handling, and at least from my client's perspective.
Yeah. From a marketing standpoint, it's almost like we have to understand and be able to replicate the pain points of our audience that we're trying to reach, and be in this space that they are, this state of confusion or uncertainty or having a problem, and kind of make that connection with them, is what I'm hearing from you, so that we can spin that story, tell that story, and hopefully convince them that our story has merit and they should follow our path and perhaps do what we hope they will do.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned the word pain points. There's a universality of human experience. We're all basically having similar experiences and experiencing similar emotions and telling stories to ourselves to make sense out of our reality and what happened to us in the past. This is a basic, it's documented in the science, right, and all the research, and it's a basic function of the human brain. It's sort of how humans make sense of our worlds and our realities. And so what I try to do is find the universal thread. And yes, it's pain point. It's absolutely pain point. Another one that I think is really great for establishing credibility, especially in my field, is finding the flaw. Where is the weakness? And exposing that up front as a way of building trust. I don't see a lot of that in marketing materials. I don't know exactly how marketers would address that, except when they're telling a story about themselves in order to pitch a product as to why they like the product or the service, for example. But the flaw is really a great way for people to relate to you and for you to build rapport.
So would this flaw be something in ourselves, or could it also be something in our product or offering? Because I'm thinking, like, if that's one way to build trust, you go back to that old Volkswagen ad where they said, they had the word lemon across the top of it. And what they were saying is like they're such perfectionists that this car that looks totally fine to them is unacceptable. Or sometimes we'll talk about a negative side of our product in a way of kind of highlighting how it's strong in other areas or something like that. Could that be one of the ways that we might identify and bring forth a flaw that could then propel our storytelling?
Yeah, I think so. I absolutely think that that's a great way. I love that Volkswagen ad. I love to study old ads for this reason. And I think flaw is, it's just a really great way. And it's not necessarily flaw so much as it is weakness. Weakness. Like, for example, if I admit a weakness in my case, or if I admit a weakness in a story that I'm telling in support of a service that I'm selling, which I do all the time in connection with my workshops, I'm talking about the transformation. I'm talking about how I had this flaw, or how I may still have this flaw and I struggle with it, and how the service helps me overcome it.
And are you kind of talking about this flaw because you are humanizing yourself in a way so that I can identify with you? Or is it also to take maybe some of the argument away from the person who you're arguing against?
I think it's both. It's primarily humanizing myself, or in a courtroom, my client. That's a huge way that I score points with jurors and with judges. I'm the first one to admit when I make a mistake, when I don't understand something, when I think I might be wrong. That makes me more human to them. It makes me bond with them, or they bond with me and connect with me on an emotional level. It's as if, well, it is, I think, the ultimate way of building trust and building rapport and being likable. Because nobody's perfect, and we all know that about ourselves. Everybody has self-doubt and self-criticism and embarrassment and humiliation and shame that they've experienced in their lives. And when you highlight that, it can really be an incredible inroad to building trust and building rapport and closing the client. In my case, because I get a lot of phone calls from people, and I do this a lot. I'm very humble on my phone calls. I'm not arrogant. I don't pretend to know it all, because I know I don't. And so that gives me, it helps build a relationship, and it gives me a lot of leeway to not be so perfect and not have to be so perfect. And that's real, and that's human.
Yeah. Interesting. It reminds me of two things. One, me telling my daughter that if she ever trips and falls in the hallway, to get up and make fun of herself first before anybody else gets the chance, because it takes all the wind out of their sails. And or the final scene in 8 Mile with the rap battle, and in the final battle, Eminem spends half of his rap making fun of himself, taking all the ammunition away from the person he was going up to battle against, and basically won that way. So, I hope that wasn't a spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen 8 Mile, but is 20 years old at this point, really. Darth Vader was Luke's dad, too, on top of that. No, I'm just...
Right? Well, humor is the thing. Like, comics, this is something that I really want to go deeper into in the future, is why and how comedy works. But I think it has a lot to do with what you're describing right there.
All right. So storytelling as a skill might actually be overrated compared to understanding why it works. Can you unpack that?
I think that it really comes down to the emotions and tapping into the emotions and the presence of the storyteller and the highlighting of certain features in the character more so than story arc. I'm not meaning to denigrate Joseph Campbell's brilliant work, but we can look anywhere on the internet about what is the hero's journey? How do we tell a good story? I don't really think it's the elements of the narrative itself that carries the day. I think it's the psychological and intellectual honesty and the emotional honesty that we bring to all of our communications that are what's going to carry the day. And so I like to focus with my clients and my workshops and on myself on the human experience of being the person in this situation where you need to either sell something, or you need to, whether it's an idea or a product or a service, or your innocence. Your innocence. Like, people are coming at you usually claiming that you did something really, really wrong in the legal profession, and you have to take accountability, be responsible, explain it. Even in a criminal case, is my theory, okay, right? But you have to explain it, and then you have to basically throw yourselves at the mercy of the jury by showing your humanity. The story arc itself isn't as important as your emotional honesty every step of the way in that process.
All right. So show our flaws, understand our pain points, make that human connection with our audience. One of the things that I sometimes see when people are selling or people are marketing is that, and I'm guilty of this too, sometimes we over-explain or we overload people with information because we want to make sure that they have everything they need to make a decision. What's, in your opinion, the downside of relying too much on data and logic when we're trying to win somebody over?
I call them the big no's: over-explaining, being over-technical, being overly logical. Our brains are increasingly unable to focus, unable to process and handle large amounts of information. We're very distracted, and social media is reinforcing these bad habits or these ways that we function as humans more and more these days. And people are overwhelmed and overloaded with information all day long, every day. And so one of the things that you want to do is not overly explain, because a lot of people will fall back on being overly logical and overly detailed and overly technical as a way of building credibility. But that doesn't necessarily build connection, and you need to have both. So I like to focus on not just the details, but the humanity of whatever it is you're trying to explain or you're trying to convey or you're trying to offer, and the emotional relationship and the rapport that you're building with the people that you're speaking to or communicating with or writing to.
Jennifer, I've often listened to somebody tell me a story, and the story itself is not very interesting or compelling or world-changing, but they have my complete attention. And then I've listened to other people who have this really important, life-changing story to tell, and I can barely keep my eyes open. What is it that makes the difference in, not in the story, but in the storytelling? What are some of the techniques that great storytellers employ and that mediocre ones don't really understand or don't use?
Okay, great question. They know how to build rapport. They know how to connect with the audience, and they do that by certain things, by making eye contact, by slowing down, by leveraging the power of silence, by tapping into the emotion that they're feeling in relation to what they're talking about, by mirroring some of the body language, and most importantly, by speaking in the language of their audience, speaking in the language of the people that they're trying to influence or persuade, or whose decision they're trying to influence.
And obviously, when you're saying in the language, you're not talking about English, Spanish, French. You're talking about the words that they may use in their lives or in their industry. What are some of the techniques that you use to figure out what those words are? Because I assume when you go into the courtroom, you haven't had time to sit down and talk to each one of those 12 jurors as well as the judge and understand what language they may use, but yet you're immediately forced to communicate and build rapport with those strangers.
Yes, and this is what makes that work really exciting. Really, really exciting, because it requires that we slow down and use parts of ourselves and our emotional intelligence that we may not use in everyday conversation. Although I do, because I'm practicing it all the time, because that's exactly the situation that I find myself in. When you are a lawyer, you get a chance to pick your jurors. And so you get a chance to interview them within these legal constraints, ask them questions about some sense of justice that they may have, or a feeling that, or an experience that they might have had that's similar to what's happened in your case. This gives you an opportunity. But I also know my community. I know who my people are. I've been here my whole life, and I have a feeling for who they are, where they live, where they come from. Of course, we ask questions up front. We poll them. We study like in like seconds. We get basic demographic information about like, are they married? Are they employed? What do they do? Are they educated? These kinds of things. Very similar to what a marketer does, right? They want to know what the demographics are of their audience or of their customer base so that they can tailor the advertisement to them to make those people want to buy the product, right? Or want to embrace the idea, in my case. And so then, once I know who they are, I have an ability to be able to speak to them in a way that's using language that they use. And a very specific way that you can do that is repeat the actual words that they use. Repeat it back. That shows you're listening, and listening is so important. It's the most important skill, I think, actually really listening, showing that you're listening, showing that you're taking it in, and then when you respond, incorporating some of that language back in your actual response. The language of the audience is the most important thing. So, of course, when I'm speaking to a juror or I'm speaking to a judge, I'm going to speak in a different way. The judge is going to want more technical, more legalistic language. When I'm speaking to a juror or when I'm trying my case, I'm using much more informal, colloquial language. I want them to understand it, and I want them to see that I'm just like them, whether I am or not. And I think essentially we're all alike because the human experience is universal.
You've touched on a few of these already in our conversation: building rapport, listening, mirroring language. What other specific traits or habits can we work on, can we develop that will make us better, more engaging storytellers over time?
Oh, that is such a good question. Let me think about that. I really think the answer lies in our ability to make the time to be in touch with ourselves and our own human experience. The more that we can slow down, and I know it's hard, I have to make the time to slow down. Like early this morning, the weather was gorgeous here in LA, and I sat in my garden and I drank my coffee with my dog just to get my feet on the ground and to say to myself, okay, how are you doing? What's going through your mind? What's happening in your life right now? But really, that's foundational. Being in touch with ourselves and what we're experiencing and what we're processing and our own experience of being human is fundamental, because if we can't connect with ourselves, there's no way that we can understand or empathize with what someone else might be feeling, what their pain might be, what their struggle might be, what their desires are, what their aspirations are. And all of that is so important, especially in marketing, as you know.
Mm. So we start working on these things. How do we start incorporating these techniques of storytelling into the kinds of content that we create every day? You know, whether it's web pages, emails, social media. How does that translate from what we've talked about into actual doing of our jobs?
Well, first let me just say that for me, and I'm a smart person, I'm not a genius. I've been told I wasn't a genius when I was very young, so I get it. I'm not a genius. I'm a smart person. I have to review these ideas constantly to keep them fresh in my mind, right? So it helps to have a cheat sheet of the ideas that you can use, sort of like a tool chest. You use one, you take it out of the chest, like a Phillips or a slotted screwdriver, depending on what the job requires, right? So I do that a lot with these ideas. And I throw the spaghetti at the wall and get a feeling for what's sticking. And I'm really quick at adjusting and taking the feedback and adjusting my sails in order to get to where it is that I ultimately want to go. So I think part of it is practice, but mostly it's awareness, being aware of what it is you can do. And practice is so important. I can practice these ideas in a supermarket with the clerk. I'm super skilled at building rapport with people who are usually emotionless and expressionless and busy, focused, head down during their job, waiting for their next break, just want to finish their shift, go home and do what other chores and things they need to do when they finally get home. I'm really good, and I'm practicing all the time with speaking to people who are complete, total strangers, trying to form a connection with them. And that has an effect on my experience of being a human, my experience being comfortable with real people in an everyday situation. And I would say that's the biggest thing that we can do. I don't care what kind of an idea you're selling or who you're selling it to. The bottom line is you need to understand how to connect with the person whose decision you're trying to impact. And there's no better way than to go out into the world and talk to humans and try to find some way to relate to them over whatever it is that they may be experiencing, for however brief that moment might be.
So, quick side quest. When
Yeah.
you're faced with that stone-faced cashier at the checkout counter,
Yeah.
do you have a go-to icebreaker? Because I think for many of us, we think our audience is so busy and so overwhelmed and in the middle of a doom scroll that we can't break through. So I'm curious to hear if you have any go-tos for getting somebody to stop their IRL doom scroll and engage with you.
Yeah. Hey, how are you doing today? How's it
That's
going?
all it takes.
I mean, that's what I do. I will tell you, there's one 7-Eleven. I don't know if you have 7-Elevens on the East Coast,
Oh,
but we
yeah.
have them here. Okay.
Every other block,
There's-
right next to
okay.
Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay, there you go. So there's this one 7-Eleven near a place that I go to once, twice a week for many, many years now. And the same cashier is in there. And I often wonder, even though I go there once or twice a week, constantly, for many, many years now, does he know who I am? Because he is so stone-faced. He's almost impenetrable. He's so difficult to break through. But I always do. And then I realize as I watch him, he's watching the cash register. He's watching the people that are coming in and out. He's watching, is somebody stealing from him? You know, what kind of crime is happening in the back? Who's ruining the soda machine? You know what I'm saying? And so I will say something to him like, hey, how's it going today? Is it going well? And then occasionally he'll go, yeah, eyes darting all around. Like he's distracted by necessity. His job requires that he's holding it down. So I do find it challenging in certain situations, but when you have a captive audience, it's a little bit easier. This guy, his attention is distracted. It's very difficult to captivate someone in that situation who in real life is handling all those things, but it can be done. I think he knows who I am now. He always says, hello, I'm good.
So I'm sure some people who are listening are like, this all sounds great, but I still have to explain what my product or service does. There's still key information I need to communicate. How do you balance the storytelling with the details that you feel the other person needs to make an informed decision?
You answer the question with the question. You balance it, right? You balance it. It's not just one thing. It's not just logic. It's not just technical details. It's not just facts. It's everything. It's appealing to the emotions. It's being grounded in the emotion as you're explaining it. And it's the details, because the details are necessary to build trust too and to establish credibility and authority. 100%. So it's balance. I have clients who want to overwhelm me with all these technical details about whatever their story is, whatever their problem is. And I'm like, whoa, wait. We have to hit the highlights, because if you overload them, people are going to go into a cognitive freeze and they're going to tune everything out. They're going to disassociate, disconnect, and you'll never get to where you want to go. You'll never get the result or the decision that you want.
All right. We live in a very AI-centric universe, it feels right now. AI is everywhere, and AI-generated content is seemingly everywhere too. How can we use storytelling to help us stand out and feel more human when so many people are relying on AI to get their message out there?
Okay, so I play with AI too, of course, right? I think it's fun, but that's about it. It's kind of scary in some ways, even though I think it's very powerful. What's really scary is when we stop doing the inner human work. I have often asked AI, hey, can you create a social media post? Like I listen to podcasts where they will teach you how to do a really good prompt, right? And so I'm really good at prompting, and what I get back is never as good as what I would get back if I did it myself. So what I'll do is I will put in the raw ingredients, right? I'll get back the feedback, and then I never publish it or post it right away, because while it sounds really good on the surface, when you really go beneath into the details, it's nowhere near the authentic type of a message that I want to create. So I think it's really important to slow down and recognize that AI slop, as I'm hearing it referred to more and more this week, is everywhere, and it's really, really dangerous. And it is, furthermore, eroding our ability to use our own mental processes to be creative, to tap into our emotions so that we can create a message that's really going to resonate with people. And yeah, those are the two big things. It's really making us cognitively lazy, and we can't let that happen.
I also use AI pretty much constantly in my work, and I find that I have erected a wall between using the AI and what the final product is. Not because I can't automate it and get it there, and not because I haven't trained it to sound like me, but it has not had my life experiences. It does not know my story the way that I know my story, but it is really good at finding patterns and finding gaps. So I find that having it build out an argument or a framework or something like that, and giving me a draft of something, which then I use to create something that I find to be much more valuable, has been effective use for me. And also I'm a strong believer in use AI to empower your employees, not to replace them. So,
I totally.
But I'm always curious to hear other experts and how they're using AI and how they see it impacting their own work and the work around them.
Well, in the legal profession, there's this huge race to get us to sign up for all kinds of software that can do all kinds of fancy things and save time, but ultimately there's no replacement for really understanding exactly, for example, if you're a lawyer, what your evidence says, what's going on in there. Yeah, it's a useful tool, but it absolutely can amplify human effort. It can save you a little bit of time and energy, but it's not a substitute.
If we wanted to take one step this week to become better storytellers in our marketing, in our lives, what's that first step you would recommend?
Just one.
One to get us started. I don't want to overwhelm people. I want them to take one step rather than not take 3 steps.
Sure. Well, this is a big step, but I think it's a really important one, and that is to always check in with yourself and see what would your own experience be if you were suffering from the pain point that your customer, your audience is suffering from. And then think about an event or a story from your own life that you could tell to relate this emotion to the emotion that your market or your audience or your listener or your viewer or your reader might have. And really tune into that so that you can speak to that in other people. I would say that is the most important ingredient of being a great storyteller and telling a great story. Empathy.
Yeah. I really like that, and I also sometimes find myself collecting stories when I'm on the other side of the table as the customer or the client, and how does this person make me feel, or what are my reactions to that? What does it feel like when I have to go into the auto repair shop and I don't know anything except where the switch is to open up the hood? How does that make me feel? And so how can I talk to people in a meaningful way about Google Analytics without making them feel stupid or anything else, and just be in a position to help them? So I think that's kind of a little bit of what you're saying. You said it a lot more eloquently and succinctly than I did, but those are some of the ways that I think I'm trying to accomplish the same things that you've set out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, if people want to learn more about you, Jennifer, where can we send them online?
they can go to my website, which is Jennifer B. as in boy, Gardner.com. They can find me on LinkedIn at Jennifer B. Gardner and on Instagram at I am Jennifer B. Gardner. It's really simple.
And on those, is that just your law, or is that also the Edge education that we were talking about in the intro?
The Edge education is linked to Jennifer B. Gardner, but you can also go to theedge.education if you want to find out more information about my programs and my workshops. Jennifer B. Gardner is how you can find out information about me as a speaker and all the work that I do. And my law firm is jgardnerassociates.com.
Awesome. And we'll have all those links in the show notes. Jennifer, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.